Okay, Sean. Well, as you know, we have discussed career paths in the past.
Yeah, we
and
have.
you
Yeah.
may recall that we both were familiar with the notion that if you were struggling a little bit to perform, you might have been invited back in the day to join personnel. Do you remember? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
The,
Yeah. Personnel. That's for assholes. I was in personnel for 30 years, Callahan. Yeah.
Yes. And then personnel underwent a transformation, and from nowhere was suddenly called HR. It's one of the best bits of, I'm a marketeer. It's one of the best bits of rebranding I've ever seen, because everyone just accepted it, didn't they? Even to the extent I'm not sure people realise what HR stands for.
Well, it was a horrible change, wasn't it? I remember at the time, because
Yeah.
as you know, I've got a union background. I can remember at the time that it was changing from personnel, which is people, to turning people into resources, which I'm just surprised it actually happened, because it's, horrible in my view.
Human resources. Human resources, or as some people used to say, human remains, which was a bit thing. But if you remember, our career path went something like, if you weren't very good, you went into personnel. And if you weren't very good at that, your next destination was premises. And if you weren't very good at that, you were toast.
Well, now we've upset 3/4 of those people working in the field. Yeah.
May I say, we love you all dearly.
We do.
Human resources and premises is now facilities. That's another one.
Facility. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, that's a good point. There's all this rebranding going on. Anyway, park that thought. So I did chuckle, and this is quite serious, but it is funny, because I thought, my theories come true. I did chuckle when I read an article this week about the size of the HR sector in the UK.
Oh, right.
And basically, the summary is it is disproportionately large, with a cost to the economy, the UK economy, of 10 billion annually compared to, say, the US. And the number of HR workers, I'm going to test you on this, in the last 10 years, right, has grown by what percentage, do you think? Number of workers in HR?
15%.
83.
83%?
Yes. Actually, to be fair, the reference points is between 2011, so after the financial crisis, and up to 2023. That's the last time anyone got the calculator out and added it all up.
Right.
But obviously, significantly increased is more than the size of the workforce, something we looked at last week. And then some bright spark has actually done this in another way round, and says in the UK, 0.6% of all workers are in some form of HR role. In the US, it's 1%. And in the EU, you'd think the bastion of rules and regulations and everything else, it's 0.8%.
So they're doing very well in the comparison. So what's the explanation for this then?
Well, this is where it gets a little bit incendiary. First of all, Mr. Fox, all this comes from a report by a group known as the Policy Exchange. Heard of them?
I think I have. It's a right-wing think tank, isn't it?
Very good. They're a right-leaning think tank.
Yeah. Leaning over.
Founded by the Conservative MPs, okay? But they enjoy charitable status.
Isn't this the lot that I seem to recall? This is Throgmorton Street or what have you?
Well, it will be, won't it?
Yeah.
Because they're based in London. They're registered charities, so they don't pay tax. Objection.
Well, yeah, I would object. Yeah, absolutely.
But they're here to promote free market and localist policies, whatever that means. Obviously influence government, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, they reckon, and you'll be familiar with this rhetoric, that the reason for this massive expansion and disproportionate size of the workforce compared to other countries and continents is excessive focus on diversity and inclusion policies in the sector.
I thought that was coming.
Yeah.
There's a flaw in that argument, isn't there? In that they seem to concentrate far more on those type of things in Europe.
Yes.
And yet they're spending far less than we are.
Yes.
Or they have far fewer. So how does that work then?
I don't know. It doesn't go into that.
No.
Their recommendation is the government, our government, should scrap burdensome EDI rules and guidance and not fund or support any initiatives whatsoever that encourage EDI in the private sector.
I think
and
you
revise,
mean DEI, don't you?
Well, funnily
As
enough,
opposed to EDI. They call it the other way around.
Yeah. I
Eddie.
suppose it doesn't really matter, does it?
No, it doesn't.
As long as you've got the same 3 letters.
Yeah.
And they reckon that you should scrap and revise all legal definition of equal work. And to be fair, Suella Braverman is ahead of this, because she said the same thing last week.
She did. She said that they're going to rip up the Equality Act last week. That was her.
Yeah. Do you think they would physically do that? Do you think they'd go and find it and rip it out of Hansard's?
We've had a brief conversation about this, and we said that we think that it'll actually be, if they ever get into power, it'll be amending the equality. Although it'd be far more dramatic, wouldn't it, as you say, to stand on a stage at their conference straight after they've won an election and rip up. You'll remember many conference speeches where I've got a little list. Do you remember that?
Oh, a list, good list. That works.
Yeah. And there was also I remember the Michael Heseltine speech about the socialist centipede. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
Left.
These things work, don't they? They do work when told well.
Yeah. And of course, the most famous. Sorry, we're digressing a bit.
No, go for it.
And if you're waiting for a U-turn, the lady's not for turning. That was Margaret Thatcher.
U-turn if you want to.
U-turn if you want to. That's right.
Yeah.
And the final one that I really liked, and this.
You're off on one. You're on a roll.
This is a reference that the older of amongst us will remember, and it was Jim Callaghan in Brighton, and the press were all screaming for an election. Do you remember? And then the opposition was screaming for a general election, and he said, "I remember a little song about that." He said, "There was I waiting at the church, waited, can't get away to marry you today. My wife won't let me." And of course, they all collapsed in laughter. Quite witty. Sorry, I carry on with your piece.
I just wanted to, for balance, because I didn't give you the government's response. The government, and I'll quote this, disagrees with the report's figures and believes that equality and economic growth go hand in hand. So that's fine. The one thing I have noticed, back to your speech techniques, is the what they call, I think, is the affirmative response technique is being overused. And that's where someone in the Commons, it's normally the Commons, goes, "What about inflation? Down. What about interest rates? Down. Yes. What about unemployment?" I think we should ban it, because it's the sketch writer of the Times said that the Starmer, apparently, I didn't see it, used this yesterday at PMQs. Today is Thursday. We record. And he said the lack of enthusiasm of the Labour benchers to join in was absolutely mind-blowing. But by the third one, there was like a third of them were doing it.
I should imagine the whips have been around, haven't they, and said you need to. I mean, that's all come from the church, isn't it? The old "hand up yours." That's where it all originates from. They're to blame.
If you're in trouble, that's what you do. You get your list of 3, don't you?
Yeah.
But it's been done. Sakir. It's been done. Move on.
Old hat, isn't it?
Move on. But that brings us back to the point here, though, in all seriousness. I did some training yesterday, which was sort of HR related, and it was all good stuff. You couldn't disagree with any of it. And it's probably rooted in the Equalities Act. And as you're doing it, you think, fair point. But the sheer amount of it was overwhelming. And you sit there, and I'm doing it online, and you're sitting there thinking, wow, all of that has to be thought through and put into policies and monitored. And you do wonder whether the whole thing has become unmanageable. And to your point, why is it that EU is 0.8 and UK is 1.6? Is there any logic to that?
Well, I wonder whether we're looking at it from the wrong angle. And I wonder whether this is all to do with the fact that, because they'll all have the equivalent of the Equalities Act throughout Europe. And even more so, because that's one of the things that's controlled from Brussels, I would suggest. So they're European laws that have gone out, European directives that have to be followed. So I would suggest that maybe it's because the way that we categorize people in this country who are HR and the way they categorize people both in the States and Europe who are working within HR, that it might be that these different responsibilities fall within companies on the continent to different departments
Well,
that
that's
don't,
possible.
and that's why, and it'd be interesting to know where they've got this figure from, what they're including in this figure of people who work
Yeah,
in
it's
HR.
not helpful. I've only got the summary stuff, but it says 1.6% of all workers in the UK are in some form of
Yeah,
HR
yeah.
roles. So that's dangerous. It's
Yeah.
dangerous.
Now, I mean, you said this before, and I'm using one of your quotes that's been lifted as well. There are lies, damn lies, and statistics. You can always delve in and make
Yeah.
sure that your argument is backed up by a load of old nonsense if you
Yeah,
dig
do it regularly.
deeper in. Yeah.
God, absolutely. I was doing it the other day.
So, yeah. So I don't know. What do you think ultimately,
I
what do you
do
think
think
the
that
outcome
there
will
is
be?
something we're very compliant, and I think more so because you think of Europe and you think Germany, everything by the rules, but
Mm,
actually they're an outlier, aren't they? And then you think of Greece and France and Italy, Spain. You don't see them running to it so quickly. I do think, like in most things, there's some fact here, but I've seen both sides of this. I've been in firms. I've been in enough firms in the last 20 years, over
mm,
about 12, 13 of them. I've seen it when you absolutely need the expertise of HR.
yeah.
When someone raises a grievance and it's quite detailed and personal,
Mm,
you want someone there who kind of knows the law, knows the rules, knows the policies and procedures of the company. And I'm talking bigger firms here, not small businesses.
yeah. Yeah.
So I think big firms can hack it. I think the problem comes in smaller firms, although I think more and more smaller firms sort of contract out that to specialist companies and bring them
Mm,
in if they need to.
mm.
So it's difficult to comment on it, if I'm absolutely honest. And part of it was tongue in cheek because I felt that my career path analysis was coming to fruition here, and that it was true. People were dropping out and going. But it is, if it's true and we are over investing, it is a drag. And you could say, well, it's
Mm.
not that much of a drag. It's only 0.8% more than Europe, but it's another thing on top of everything else that makes us less competitive.
Yeah,
So it's
I
food for
would.
thought more
Yeah,
than anything else.
well, it is. I would just caveat it by saying I think perhaps we need to look at more where it's coming from than what it's saying.
Oh, okay.
I think that